Hello and welcome to another program with Pastor Frank Lewis talking about how to have a great marriage, how to have great relationships. And I'm excited today to talk about the rewards. Last week we talked about the work that needs to be done. Well, there's rewards for that work. And that work is the work of resolving unresolved emotional pain. Remember, I told you unresolved emotional pain is the root of all relationship problems, but certainly the root of marriage problems. Well, today we're going to talk about the rewards. What do you get for doing all this work? Well, you get a marriage really made in heaven right here on earth. You're going to find out today that what you've been looking for in your marriage is possible. What you've been wanting and not having great satisfaction in your marriage, not having what you thought you would get when you got married, well, that is going to be something that you will find out today. There are rewards for having less pain. And what's exciting about this is that the rewards are based upon the title. That's why I called the book that I'm writing, and I'm writing this book for marriage, called What Women Need and Men Want. And I told you before, it's not sex. What it is it's intimacy, okay? Now men that listen to this might say, well, that's not intimacy, that's not really what I want. Well, it is what you want, because God created us to have emotional intimacy with Him and with each other. Now, today we're not talking about with Him, we're talking about with each other, and particularly with your spouse. So I'm excited to talk about this today because you're going to like what you hear. Emotional intimacy is the basic result, is the foundational result that occurs when you have less pain, because you can be known at a deep, deep level. And that's what's exciting. And we're going to delve into what is emotional intimacy, what is emotional connection. I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to actually read excerpts from experts that talk about emotional intimacy and emotional connection. And you're going to want to take notes. I'm sure you're going to want to take notes, and you're going to want to review this video over and over again. But before I do that, I want to tell you about my book that I wrote. I wrote a book called The Key. And The Key is the basis for emotional healing. This book is a basis for emotional healing. And you can get this book on Amazon. You can also find out about the books that I'm writing. God has given me an assignment to write 7 books on relationships under the banner of Relationships Revealed. So I have a website called relationshipsrevealed.org. And you can go to that website and you can look at the different titles, and you can also press the button, learn more about the things that I'm writing about the things that I'm doing in this ministry. And you can also hit the Want Help button. And if you'll leave me your email and your phone number, that'll be helpful. If you leave a phone number, I can just make it real easy. I can text you, find out when to call, and we can talk about getting on the phone together. I also have a YouTube channel under Pastor Frank Lewis, and if you'll look up Pastor Frank Lewis under the YouTube channel, you'll find a playlist, and I think there's 15 or 16 on there now about marriage. And you're going to like what you see on there, but you're particularly going to like what you hear and see today. I said before, we were created by God to be emotionally intimate and emotionally connected to God and to each other. Marriage is not supposed to be without being known at a deep deep level, like Adam and Eve were before they ate the tree, before they both ate the apple, and really they disobeyed God. They were known at a deep level. They couldn't hurt each other. Well, actually, what I'm going to share with you today is going to be a little bit, a slice of what they had in the garden. So without further ado, let's look into it by having me read you some of what the experts say. Now, this is out of Psychology Today, and it's talking about emotional intimacy. Emotional intimacy is the foundation of deep, fulfilling connection between marriage partners. This essential component of a strong relationship not only enhances the bonds between couples, but also significantly contributes to their overall well-being. Now, bonding is a word that you're going to hear about today. Bonding is, just think of it as emotional glue. If you have a bond with someone, it's an emotional glue. You're bonded together, kind of like you take glue and you put two pieces of wood together, and now you have one piece. Well, didn't God say in His Word that the two shall become one? Yes, He did. And that's what He means, is this kind of emotional bond. And strengthening emotional closeness can lead to increased happiness, trust, resilience within the marriage relationship, making it a critical aspect of long-term relational satisfaction. That's a lot right there. That's a lot to be excited about, but we have more to come. What is emotional intimacy? Emotional intimacy is the bond that forms through deep feelings of connection, understanding, and vulnerability. Now, vulnerability is a key word. I'm going to talk further about that after we've gone through all this, but you're going to hear the word vulnerability often between marriage partners. It involves the ability to open up, give and receive affection, and share mutual understanding of each other's needs, desires, and emotions. Recent research underscores the importance of emotional intimacy in relationships, revealing that couples with high levels of emotional closeness experience greater partner satisfaction, improved communication, and reduced conflict. Isn't that great? Reduced conflict. I know when I was married, I had lots of conflict because my wife had never dealt with emotional pain and I hadn't dealt with emotional pain. So we had a lot of conflict. Maybe that's happening to you. Well, I hope this gives you a reason to really delve into and get resolved the emotional pain. Conversely, relationships lacking in emotional intimacy are more likely to face issues such as increased conflict, diminished sexual desire, and feelings of loneliness or disconnection. None of us wants that. I didn't want that in my marriage, but I did have it because I hadn't done the work. Now, this article talks about ways to improve emotional intimacy. Building emotional intimacy requires time, effort, and intentional practice. However, the benefits of fostering this connection are well worth the investment, often leading to stronger, healthier marriage relationships. Here are some strategies to enhance. Open communication of feelings. Sharing feelings can be challenging, especially for those who are not accustomed to emotional, here's that word, vulnerability. However, openly expressing emotions reduces misunderstandings and builds a sense of trust with your partner. Research has shown that couples who regularly engage in open and honest communication, remember what we talked about, listen, mirror or reflect back, and validate. You're going to hear some of that in this article. Research has shown that they have honest communication are more likely to experience higher relationship satisfaction and emotional intimacy. You need to be present in the moment when you're with your marriage partner and having quality time together. Set it aside. Be in the moment, engaging in activities together without distractions. Put the phone away. Have conversations that foster emotional closeness. Active listening. You know what active listening is? That's a word that psychologists use for reflecting back, mirroring. Active listening, where you fully engage with your partner's thoughts and feelings, is a key aspect of emotional intimacy. Studies indicate that partners who are more mindful and present during interactions report higher levels of emotional connection and satisfaction. That's listening, intentional listening. Show affection physically and verbally, physical touch, including hugs, kisses, and cuddling, along with verbal affirmations. We talked about that last week. Verbal affirmations play a significant role in strengthening emotional bonds. Here's something that is amazing. The release of oxytocin, referred to as the love hormone, during these interactions enhances both physical and emotional closeness. I would also add to that there's joy that comes when you have this kind of connection. There's joy. That person is glad to be with you, your wife or your husband. Prioritize time together. Set aside time. That's very, very important. End the day with gratitude. Concluding the day by sharing your highs and lows and expressing appreciation for your spouse. Appreciation for your spouse fosters feelings of safety, gratitude, and emotional connection, emotional closeness. So, that's some of what you can do in order to be able to improve emotional intimacy. Now, here's some of the barriers to an emotional intimacy. And you're going to realize we've talked about these in prior weeks. Past trauma. Experience of neglect, abuse, or past relationship trauma can make it difficult for individuals to be emotionally vulnerable in their current relationships. Well, that's what I talked about last week, which is unresolved emotional pain. Comes from the trauma, comes from the abuse, comes from the neglect. So understanding and addressing these traumas can pave a way for building emotional intimacy. In other words, what they're saying here is dealing with unresolved emotional pain will cause emotional intimacy, will help it. Now, here's another one. I talked about attachment. If you didn't get properly attached, you're going to have lack of nurturing and affection during childhood is going to cause a struggle with expressing emotions or being affectionate with your partner. Awareness and intentional work on attachment styles. Well, that's dealing with unresolved emotional pain will cause more of the attachment to take place. Lack of communication. Poor communication habits, such as, have you ever done this? I certainly did this when I was married, such as assuming your partner knows how you feel or avoiding difficult discussions can prevent establishment of deeper emotional connection. Now, here's this article, talks about long-term benefits of emotional intimacy. I want you to write this down. I want you to get this. Go back and review this video. The benefits of emotional intimacy extend far beyond the immediate improvements in communication and relationship. See, if you go to a therapist, many times or you go take a class, they'll tell you how to communicate better. Problem is that long-term emotional, intimate relationships are associated with better and mental and physical health, greater life satisfaction, and increased resilience during challenging times. But you don't just get that from better communication. You get that by being known, by sharing open, honest, vulnerable communication. So that's very important. Research shows that emotional intimacy is linked to longer, healthier lives. Emotionally intimate partners, marriage partners, are more likely to feel in sync with each other, align their goals, and work together towards a shared future. The sense of partnership not only enhances the relationship, but also contributes to individual well-being. Well, that's exciting, isn't it? Well, I have another one here we're going to talk about, and that is from Dr. Michael Messina, a psychiatrist, and he talks about the Gottman Institute. Now, if you don't know about the Gottman Institute, these are people that studied marriage relationships for over 40 years. They ought to know something. I think you would probably agree. And what they've come up with is, after observing thousands of their couples in the Love Lab, that's what they called it, for more than 4 decades, they discovered that most couples are not arguing about specific things like finance, parenting, or dealing with difficult in-laws. Instead, they were fighting about a failure to connect emotionally, and likely they didn't even know why they were having those fights, if you will, or disagreements. So, Dr. Messina defines emotional intimacy as a close emotional bond characterized by mutual understanding, trust, vulnerability, and communication. It's often described as a feeling of being in sync. Didn't we just hear that? In sync with someone else. Emotional intimacy is important to a healthy relationship, healthy marriage relationship, because it allows partners to feel safe and secure in the connection they have with each other. It allows for a greater level of communication and understanding. When emotional intimacy is present, marriage partners are more likely to feel satisfied, fulfilled in their relationship. However, emotional intimacy is not something that comes easily to everyone. It takes time and effort to build trust and understand each other's needs. It's important to be open, honest, and vulnerable. Keep hearing that word with each other, and to make an effort to understand each other's perspective. So, we're going to talk about what does it take to develop emotional intimacy. Dr. Messina says emotional intimacy is not simply about being in love. See, we all get into marriage because we're in love or having strong feelings for a person. No, it's open, honest, and being open, honest, and vulnerable with one another. So we need to get emotional intimacy as the sharing of thoughts and feelings with another person in a way that is trusting, safe, and vulnerable. Being emotionally open and honest with each other. Now, I'm going to share with you what Dr. Messina says when you're experiencing emotional intimacy, you're going to have these results. You feel like you can be yourself around your partner without feeling judged or misunderstood. You feel safe and secure sharing your deepest thoughts and feelings with your partner. You have a strong desire to please and support your partner and feel a strong connection to their well-being. You frequently find yourself daydreaming about being with your partner. Now, here's signs that you're not having emotional intimacy. You don't feel close to your partner. You don't share feelings with your partner. You don't confide in your partner. You don't feel like your marriage partner understands you. Don't feel supported by your marriage partner. You don't feel like your partner cares about you. Oh my gosh. How many of you are experiencing those results? I know I did. I know I did in my marriage, and didn't work well. So I have one other article, and it's very, very powerful. How does emotional connection strengthen your relationships or your marriage relationship? Ultimately, within healthy relationships, vulnerability is what draws us closer to another person. Quality relationships depend on the level of connection and openness. When we are not vulnerable, keep hearing that word, in relationships, we miss out on opportunities to develop trust and intimacy by sharing emotional experiences. The ability to express yourself honestly without judgment also strengthens your marriage relationship. If both partners feel comfortable being transparent, they can process emotions. They can process what? Unresolved emotional pain. Here we are. And more understanding. The two-way street of sharing allows both parties to develop trust. You must have trust. And so we are in a place where these articles have helped us to understand what emotional intimacy is, what it isn't, when you don't have it, what it looks like. And now I'm just going to end up reading from Dr. Messina, How to Build Lost Emotional Intimacy. In every relationship, emotional intimacy is important. Please get that. It's what keeps the spark alive and makes us feel close to our marriage partner. When emotional intimacy is lost, it can be challenging to rebuild, but it is not impossible. And I would agree with that wholeheartedly, because if you do the work that I talked about last week of resolving the emotional pain, this will be easier. Talk about your feelings. It's important to communicate with your marriage partner about how you're feeling. This will help them understand where you're coming from and what you need for them. Be present. We already talked about being present. So it really comes down to the things that you kept hearing, which was that you need vulnerability. Well, let's look for a minute at what is vulnerability. Vulnerability is opening yourself up, here's the definition, to the potential of being attacked or harmed. See, when you do that with your husband or wife or with a friend, or even in a group like I had last night, you have to, if you really want to resolve emotional pain, you have to be willing to be judged and fixed. You have to be willing to be judged and fixed. But if you set the rules prior to sharing with your husband or wife, you set the rules with a friend, then what's going to happen is you're going to be not judged and you won't be hurt. You won't be harmed. But you got to be willing to be. See, you got to put the neck on the chopping block and believe that your wife or your husband or your friend or people in your group are not going to hurt you. And so it's very, very important to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a key because you've got to be willing to be judged. You've got to be willing to be fixed. You've got to be willing for somebody to tell you what they think you should do. But when they don't, now you've been rewarded because now you can be open and you can be experiencing a level, like I said in the last week, you're going to build trust when you have emotional connection. But that vulnerability, openness, transparency, telling your spouse what it is you went through as a child, what it is you're going through now, that's going to lead you back to some of that. Hopefully your wife or your husband has read the book. If they've read the book, they're going to be able to ask you questions that are going to help you to be able to get in touch with what happened as a child. That's what I do in the groups that I have. I sometimes ask a person, they say, well, I don't know what to talk about. Well, I then talk to them about what's happening in the present, and then we'll be able to lead it back to what happened to them as children. And so vulnerability and this transparency and honesty are a key part of being able to have emotional intimacy. You know now what the rewards are. This is worth doing. This is worth having a great marriage because you've done the work of getting the unresolved emotional pain done so that now you're not hiding anymore behind a facade and a mask. You have less pain, so you're not having emotional upsets like you were. So now you can tell your spouse what in fact is happened to you as a child. She'll listen to you, she'll mirror to you, and she'll go ahead and validate you and accept you and approve you. And if that's happening, you are now going to build trust, and you're going to have healing and wonderful relationship, a relationship made right here, right in heaven, experienced here. Because you now are going to be able to be open, vulnerable, and transparent. She's going to be able to be open, vulnerable, and transparent. You're going to feel so connected. Everything in your life is going to get better in your marriage. Your marriage is going to be so full, exciting, and wonderful because you're going to be sharing the real you is meeting the real her, maybe for the first time. And what's going to happen from that is you're going to have such a wonderful, exciting, and satisfying marriage. And on top of it, you're going to have the best sex life you've ever had. Why? Because you're going to be knowing each other. Not just, you're going to be knowing each other in vulnerability. You're going to know each other at a deep emotional level. And that's what God's after, that's what He wants, and that's what's available when you do the hard work. But the work has to be done, and then you can have emotional connection and emotional intimacy. That's what God wants for your marriage. Anything less than that is taking much less than what God has for you in your marriage. So do the work, have the emotional connection, and then have a great marriage made in heaven right here on earth.